Hey everyone, I figured I'd go live here with sculpting the rest of Tundro. I don't think I'm going to talk too much with this one because I'll probably talk anyway. But yeah, I'm just when I get to it, I have the legs sculpted here and baked, and there's 10 of them, just like Tundro has. And he is baked, but he's got a few cracks from the baking process that I'm also going to have to fill during this session. And all I have left to do though is the underside. You can see the cardboard tube where I had the bolt, the pair of bolts, and there's still a bolt inside of them, but I think that's gonna live in there forever because I don't want to cut this open. So I think I'll just get started here. I've got a piece of clay here that I started. Camera angle right here so you guys can see most of what I'm doing. And this is all Sculpey 3 that I'm using, but what I'm smushing in the bottom here is a mixture of Sculpey 3 and Super Sculpey. Just because I had it left over and have been using it as kind of an inside base and using the Sculpey 3 for the details. This I've just been using. I used it to bulk up some of the inside just because I had some left and I was running out of the Sculpey 3. But my daughter was nice enough to buy me a pound of the white yesterday. I mixed it with the other half of the black, and now I'm all set. So what I'm going to do here is fill in the bottom here, sculpt the tail on the backside, and just figure out these inside details along with smushing the feet in so that he stands with all 10 legs. So let's get to it. The important thing here I need to be careful of is not damaging any of the horns, especially this chin one, because this chin one is super thin. This I will grind away later so it's more jagged, but for now it's safe and protected being a whole piece. And that's more important at the moment than making it look accurate. I just need it to stay in one piece until all the final baking and sculpting is done, because that's the part that you end up really squishing and jostling and banging stuff around by mistake because you're going at every different angle. I mean, yeah, you'll do that with painting too, but it's easier with the painting when you're not holding on to so many different clamps and stuff so you don't, accidentally mash parts of the clay that you've already done. All right, so I've got my base clay in here, and I think I need about maybe another 1/4 inch of bulk inside of there. So I'm going to use more of the Super Sculpey 3 mix, which is just the beige colored, flesh colored Super Sculpey. Yeah, Super Sculpey with one small block of white and a half of a small block of black. I wanted to try just the regular Sculpey 3 with this guy instead of this normal sculpt I use, because a few years ago I sculpted this cool griffin and I hadn't finished it, and I thought about it about a month ago and I was like, you know what, I think I'm gonna pull that thing off the shelf and finish it. It's painted, I just need to do the feathers. And I pulled it down and noticed that it had huge cracks. So that was disappointing, and because it was already painted, I would have had to repaint it, and it was kind of a bummer, but it is what it is. So I want to try different mixes because I don't want to have that problem again. I mean, granted, it's in my garage storage area. It's not, it doesn't get freezing in there, but in the winter it does kind of get cold. So I don't know if it was it was a temperature related thing or if it was just a um, this is how Sculpey is, haha, screw you kind of thing. Alright, I just want to make sure that I need to put a layer of the Sculpey 3 as well, so I'm just cutting my clay so that, trying to get a piece that fits just about perfectly in there so I can blend it in and then get started on the rest of the details. Alright, I think it's good enough. So I'll really push this in so that it blends with, or at least adheres to the layers inside of it. Underneath it, I mean. But what I've got here is about an inch of Sculpey, which means that at 275 it needs to bake for at least 45 minutes. The final bake on this guy I will probably do at least an hour and a half at 240 on my oven, which will get it to the 240 to 280 to 90 range, which isn't enough to burn the Sculpey, but it's enough to get everything to that magic 275 number, which melts all the polymers and should keep it from chipping in the future. I think that was part of the problem with some of my older sculpts as well, is that I was doing the smelly bug method of baking at 200 for a long time, and the stuff gets hard, but it wasn't melting the polymer inside of it enough so that it adheres to itself. And I think that was the issue I was having with brittleness with a lot of my head sculpts, and that's why I started doing my head sculpts in resin. So I learned how to do resin casting as a result, but like the Jabba head, he's in pieces. A lot of those heads are in bad shape, to be honest. And it's just because I didn't know what I was doing. And, I'll admit that. It's a learning process. I was using the wrong kind of primer on the Sculpey, which actually explains why some of the stuff like the Jabba head, the original one, was kind of tacky after I'd primed it. I thought maybe it's a bad can of primer, but it was actually the primer interacting with the Sculpey. So that's a thing that everybody needs to watch out for, apparently. And it's all a learning experience, and it's all kind of like a puzzle, and like a detective. You have to figure this stuff out, do your research, and it all comes together. And then, people will say these are like this guy. He's coming together so fast, and 5 years ago he wouldn't have been. It's just I have that much practice and experience under my belt that I know what I'm doing. He's getting pretty heavy, though, to be honest. Less so now that the channel locks and bolt isn't hanging off them, but it's still a pretty heavy sculpt. Let's see here. Maybe that'll be better. Alright, so I have a bunch of tools here. I have metal tools and I have wood tools. And some might ask, which do you prefer, the metal tools or the wood tools? And to be honest, I prefer both because they have different uses and different things that they are good at and bad at. Like the metal tools are great for smoothing and cutting. They're going to really cut into the Sculpey. Even if you're just smoothing it, the metal tools are going to cut in. Wood tools, what's nice about them is they're going to pull the material better. The clay gets stuck in even if your wood seems very smooth, it's still going to pull the Sculpey around. Yeah, which is good. Sometimes you want that. Sometimes you want to move Sculpey around your piece, to do blending and such, and that's where the wood tools really come in handy. I'm using this metal one here because I'm trying to just keep it smooth and cut in with the edge of this shell. but I'll probably switch to a wood tool to push some of this in between the armor plates here. And what I'm replicating under here is just the underbelly, so it'll have that same elephant flesh look as the head and the legs, and tie that all together. But you know, just like your fingernails or a turtle shell, it connects to the, you know, to the body somehow. And so I'll just have to kind of figure out how I want that connection to look. Is it just going to be butt right up against it? Is there going to be maybe a few wrinkles? Will there be like some kind of weird transition? I don't know yet. We'll see how it looks once I get there. Kind of, when I do any of this stuff, I don't know, it's kind of like modeling by the seat of my pants. I just kind of do and decide a lot of this stuff on the fly. I don't think too much ahead. I plan and research, but I mean that's only going to get me so far. With some of the details, I just kind of have to, you know, jump in and see how it goes. All right, so I got my nice solid base in there, and let me find the shortest leg. And yeah, see, that's two. No, that actually might be the perfect height. But I think I'm gonna add just not one more layer in there. I want to really be sure, because the final bake, he's just going to be standing on his own legs. So I want to make sure that it's really in there. This is like the last bit of the clay. This is the clay that I just processed. I use a pasta machine, a manual crank one, and just that last bit, that last roll through, I just kind of roll it up, and that makes it easier to pull off chunks of clay when I need it, as opposed to just, sometimes I'll hammer it into one big mass, but I've been doing this past few times and I kind of like it. All right, so this is about 1/8 of an inch thick, which should do the trick. All right. See, I don't know. I don't know about adding that much more, because that much more and I start to lose some of the way the armor hangs down. I think I'll thin this out just a little bit more, and I'll just use it on one part of it where I can use the shortest legs, and I will line these legs up shortest to tallest so I know which ones match. And let's see these two, and I need to cut some off of one of them, so I think I'll cut this one. Sculpting cut's pretty easy. Okay, there. So actually I'm going to cut just a little bit more off. Okay, so I'll just bulk up the part where the shorter legs is, and the shorter part of the legs is, and do a little bit of just a transition, and that'll fix that. All right. I could always do the longer legs on one side too, because I do want him kind of tilted a bit, like he's, you know, about to or mid-charge. That's why his head is at the angle it is. So that could also work. Where are you? See, this right here needs some kind of transition, so I'll have to add something there. I mean, I don't know, maybe. This is the kind of detail that you're only going to see now, probably. I'll probably never show the underside again because he'll be standing for the most part. So if I did nothing under here, it would be about the same. Alright, I kind of want him leaning on this side, so maybe I will do the shorter legs on the one side and the longer legs on the other. And I think this one of these. Okay. Yeah, I might have a hard time even getting in between there to sculpt any detail. All right. Use a little pressure to make sure they're all standing the same way, the same height. All right. I'd say these guys are in pretty well. Don't necessarily see. I want to make sure that this part's not touching the ground either, and I don't think it will be once I put the rest of the legs in. So I think I'm in good shape. Thankfully, even though I had to sculpt 10 legs, the design is really simple. It's just a tube that I rolled on with a wire to do little details. Then I rolled it on a brush and smoothed it with some alcohol, and that was that. Okay, one more foot leg. All right. Okay, he's standing on his own 10 legs now. Awesome. I might need to put a little bit of clay under that back one. Actually, both back ones, unless I apply some pressure. That ought to do the trick. Want to make sure all 10 legs are touching the ground, which luckily when you're doing it like this, you can apply pressure and get it there. All right, there, well, 10 legs. And he's standing. He's leaning to the side a bit, so he looks like he's charging, and that'll go good with the poses I have planned for Gloop, Gleep, Zoc, and Igoo. Love all those names. All right, excellent. His body probably could be a little longer, but I'm happy with how it turned out. It can be hard to proportion these things based on the different artworks, but the Alex Toth stuff is pretty nice and consistent. So any issues are purely my own. Okay. You see how I have to keep rotating them around. This is why I haven't, grind the horn down yet. I know as soon as I do that, I'm going to end up tapping it off of my table and destroying it. So I figure, why test fate? tempt fate, or however the expression goes. All right. Oh, I've been waiting to use this one. This guy has been Tundro fun to make. Ah, dad jokes. Love doing those to my daughters because they hate them. And I think that's what makes them so fun. Especially bugs them is I have a song for everything. And if I don't have a song, I just make stuff up. I'm not a good singer, but I will sing in private. All right. Sorry, I'm kind of holding this up to my face here, and I feel like sculpting is a full body thing. What I'm doing is blending in this clay I just added inside the rump, and I need to decide how, I need to make a little bum crack there, I think, and tuck some clay in there and work that out. And then I've got to transition all the middle stuff in there. So I just keep tucking in the clay. You notice I switched to a wooden tool. This is the tool I refer to as my favorite tool. I don't know why, I just use it all the time. It's I really like this side of it, and this side's good for some bigger spreading, but this side here is good for pushing stuff around. And then a lot of my tools that I use for clay, where's my second favorite tool? Here it is, that I make myself. This is just a dowel, a wooden dowel, that I put in a pencil sharpener on both ends. But this end, first I drilled a hole, and then once it was sharpened, I put the head of a pin in it. It's one of those round pins, so it has a ball on one end, and it's a pointy stick on the other. So also good for getting in those tight areas. But yeah, it's just, it's when I'm sculpting, I feel like it's a lot of making little snakes and then blending those snakes and, balls of clay into the areas. And it gets messy, and you get, sometimes you get to a point where you're like, is this, might not be looking well. Like the head, when I first started his head, it was like, ugh, I don't know how this is going to turn out. And then you finally start to nail it, and you start getting into the proportions better, and you start feeling it. Like I feel like I'm there right now, trying to, fill in all this crap. But I'll get there. I remember one episode where Tundro's legs expanded. And they went like, whoop, and he stood really tall on stick legs. I'm pretty sure I'm remembering that correctly. But it has me wondering, where the hell that all came from. Is he a whole leg underneath here? It could be a little tricky transitioning the cured Sculpey, the baked Sculpey, with the unbaked. sometimes you'll find it just doesn't want to adhere to it. But that's when I'm using my usual mix. Um, I found though on this one that everything's just blending together really, really nicely and easily. And I think it's just because the Sculpey 3 is softer and stickier. And to some people that might be a downside. And to me, for some cases it would be, but not this time. I think I might need to move this again since I keep holding it up like this in front of my face so you guys can see what I'm doing better. But I'm just packing the clay underneath these two back feet, legs, and I'll pack more under there than I need to and then smush it back down. I'll stand them up. And then that way I'll blend the rest of it, and I should have the right amount. I think I'm gonna need to make his butt cheeks, or at least that area. And so what I'm gonna do there is I just rolled a couple balls. It's a boy, and just blend that in. And if you don't think I'm going to give him a little butt crack, then you're sorely mistaken. Alright. This area is a little tighter to get the clay into. They don't really want to move the legs now that they've got them in position, so I can't apply too much pressure. Sometimes it helps to have a piece of clay laying here that you can just tap your tool against to stick the excess stuff to. There we go. This tool I'll scrape out some of the stuff here along the seam between the armor and the soft clay body now, and use this to blend it a little better. I think I need a little more in here so I can dip it. That's going to get covered by the tail, so I'm not sure why I'm worrying about it. But the better the base you have, the easier it is to work on top of it. All right, let's see here, a little. There, he's got a little bum now. All right. I use my fingers a lot when I'm sculpting to blend stuff around, to smooth it out. I'd like to see more people doing stuff like this by hand instead of resorting to 3D all the time. I really like the tactile feel of just getting my hands dirty and working with, actual art materials. Not that, 3D stuff isn't art. It is. It's just, people are losing that. Okay, so I need to just transition a little lip from the base to the around the base of the legs. So I'm adding a snake of clay here and pushing that in, and then I'll blend it all together. Looks like I got a crack in one of the legs as well, so I will have to fill that with clay. Since I'm going to be baking it one more time, I can fill any of the current cracks with the Sculpey. Any cracks after this final bake, though, I'm going to have to use Abe's Epoxy Sculpt, because I don't want to have to bake it again and then risk more cracks just in case. And it's because of the different thicknesses and material and such. Some of it must end up cooler and or cool faster than others, and then it forms the cracks, and nature of the beast. It's still pretty easy to work with this stuff. It's not outrageously expensive as far as materials go. It's easy to find. You can pick up a few blocks for a few bucks and just practice with it. And since it doesn't dry unless you bake it, it will get old, but you do have a little bit. Just store it in an airtight container. Didn't used to be that way. Apparently they changed the formula at some point over the last decade or so, and now it doesn't have the shelf life it once did. Not that I, I'm able to keep it around for long anyway. Go and just filling in, transitioning the bottom of the legs so that they blend in. I'll use a brush with thinner to really smooth this out before adding any detail, texture. Probably just some alcohol, some 91% rubbing alcohol, since I already have that on hand, because that's what I thin my paint with, my Tamiya acrylic. Yes, I've heard of lacquer to thin it, but I've got so many Tamiyas that I've been collecting and using over 15 plus years that already have the alcohol mixed in with it, that it'd be like throwing them all away. And while I like to grow and try new things, on that same token, not everything needs to be changed and upgraded to the latest and greatest. If you're getting good results, if you're happy with the results, then stick with what you're happy with. Yeah, I wasn't sure if I wanted to do any live sculpting because it's a lot of just mushing stuff around, and it's kind of hard to show. Keep that camera focused on every little thing since I'm constantly moving this around. But, I'm blending inside of these gaps around the outside, and a lot of it's just dropping in the right size ball of clay and then smushing it in there, and then using other tools to get the shape you need. I don't have to get perfect in between here, though. I mean, these, like I said, you're not going to see this area when all said and done. It'll never be displayed upside down. And I plan on making a base for them, so it's not like you'd be over top of glass. But for my own anal retentiveness, I do want to get in there. And I wonder if I can... Maybe I'll switch the camera. Oops. It's knocking stuff off. Yeah, maybe if I switch the camera to the other side here, you guys will be able to see what I'm actually working on. Or not. Sometimes when you're sculpting, you'll find that it's easier to do one side than it is the other, just based on, you know, which hand. If you're ambidextrous, you probably won't have a problem, but I had a harder time sculpting this side of the face than I did this. All right. Oh man, I need to put some in there too. Ugh. I say a lot of times I'll just make a tube of clay that'll slide down into the hole, and then that's easier to mush it in there. This tool, these ball tools, I have a bunch of different sizes of these. I got these on Amazon. They're real nice. I've made other ones with plastic balls, but the metal ones are really nice for smoothing. The plastic tends to be kind of, you know, like I said, metal for cutting, wood for pushing, and the plastic is kind of in between. But the plastic does tend to rot with the Sculpey. The Sculpey will affect the plastic. So over time, like this ball here, you see how it started to crack and it started to dimple. It's an acrylic ball. And that's the Sculpey that I've left on it over the years. Not cleaning it off right away, etc. All right, I need a really thin tool to get in there. I have one that I made. It's basically 2 bent needles, and that's what I'm looking for. Where are you? Oh, there you are. Okay, yeah, so this is just 2 needles. One is 90 degree, one's a 45, pins, basically. And, you know, again, just made it from dowel put in a pencil sharpener, just like sharpening a pencil, and then, you know, you use your pin vise to put a, you know, big enough hole to super glue the pin in. And then this tool is perfect enough to get, you know, perfectly small enough to get in that tight area. And then the brush with the thinner will smooth it even further. Okay, I think this side is almost there. Just need one little more bit in here. Yeah, the Dragon Zoc should be fun, but I think he's going to be a little bit of a challenge as well. Just he's a bit spindly in some areas. The wings are going to be tricky. I'll have to figure out how I want to do those. Maybe look into doing sheets of latex or cast dragon skin for those. course, using a tool made out of 2 needles isn't necessarily the least painful tool you can make, but it does its trick. It does the trick. All right. Problem with 10 legs is you have 8 gaps to fill, and I forgot to fill this one. Or actually closer to, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12 gaps. 8 in between the legs, and then 1 on each end. Exciting. But necessary, because even though you can't see down here, this clay I'm adding is, you know, going to blend with the legs and add to the strength and stability of them. All right, a little bit more. If you can see, there's a little bit of a hole in between those 2 legs. So I want to fill that. Let's get a little more clay stuck on the end of this tool here. And voila. All right, now on to the other side. So you can see this side's blended in, it's transitioned. I'll add detail in there next after I fill them all. And this side is, the legs are just stuck on, not blended in or anything. Okay, I'm gonna switch back to the other side because it'll probably be easier to see. Okay, so it looks like I already did one of these. So again, I'm just picking off little balls of clay, rolling them into a ball or a tube, and putting them in the areas that I'm going to be blending them into. Whatever fits down into there the easiest. Oh, I don't want to drop clay on the floor. Okay. At least I don't have a carpet. I don't know how any of you build models and have carpet. They call it the carpet monster for a reason. And if you stick, I think I'll stick clay to the tools, and that lets me get it where I need it, unless it won't become unstuck from the tool for some reason. Best laid plans and all that. Yeah, Zock's going to be a little tricky in the eye section too, not just the wings. I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to handle his eyes. I mean, I know I'll do glass eyes, but it might, you know, I have to figure out how I can do them, and because they're going to be bigger eyes than he has, so I don't have 100% glass like I used for Tundro's eyes. I'm going to have to figure out a way to add the eyes in later, so I'll need to maybe bake unpainted glass into it without any eyelids, and then add those eyelids on later using Abe's or something. Getting there. This is not the kind of video that gets right to the point. And that's the kind I actually like. But when you're sculpting, I mean, it takes time, and that's kind of what I like to show here, that even though I make it look like, you know, easy and fast, there's, you know, it's actually a lot of time consuming work that I've put into these. All right. So just a little bit more in here, and I should be good to go. So start the next phase of the detailing. Have to keep adjusting my lights. All right, now I got to do the snake, the same snake I did for the other side to do the interior. And it's kind of funny, make something this with something that, with basically what you would expect a kindergartner to do. Skill of a kindergartner. Making snakes out of clay. But those are the basic building blocks. Yeah, I don't know when everybody seem to collectively lose their patience for doing stuff like this. And I'm not talking just this, it's, you know, knitting or just any of the slow stuff that people do. It's just not as many people do it as it used to. Maybe they're too busy. But it's like I tell my girls that they'll tell me they don't have time to do stuff, and it's like, well, you have time to sit there on your phone. The amount of time you've sat there chatting with your friends on the phone, you could have done a whole lot of sculpting or, you know, anything really. Practice for your violin, Riley. So I don't want them to use the I didn't have time as an excuse, because I've seen what they were doing. Let them suffer the consequences as well. All right, almost done here. And then I can start with, I'll smooth it out as much as I can. It's hard to get my finger in there now, so I'll use this tool, which is kind of like having a tiny wooden finger, just to smooth it out. Okay. I'm just trying to fix any holes and gaps. I don't like holes and gaps unless they're supposed to be there. I see a couple. There's one behind this leg, and there's one by the back leg. This tool is just a piece of brass wire with a rounded end, 16th inch, stuck into wooden dowel as usual. Whatever works. You don't need to spend a whole lot of money on clay tools when you can make most of your own. with a pencil sharpener and a couple dollars worth of dowel rod. You can get a pack of different sizes at craft stores, so you can make different size tools. I actually made my my younger daughter Lainey. She likes to sculpt, and I made her a set of these different shapes. I ground them on my a lot of stuff like this. Actually, I made her. I ground it on my belt sander. I have a freestanding belt sander that I got at Harbor Freight that I lug outside to use, and it's great for grinding stuff like that. So I made her a bunch of tools. And all right, she uses them. There, so he's it's funny, all that you can't see any of it except for that little area there. Okay, so next I want to blend that and smooth it and then let it dry for a bit. Here's our old Barrio guy figure. I have a few of these that I never packaged in a box. So when people ask me about them, I'll just, you know, oh yeah, here's one more. But 1/24 scale, I was doing him at 1/24 scale, so that's the size of Tundro. And the other ones are going to be, I mean, Gloop and Gleep. Gloop's going to be, you know, about 5-6 inches tall. Gleep, about like that. Maybe shoulder height on him. The taller one will be Zoc. Zoc's going to be very tall. And I have to decide what pose I want to do him in. So I don't want to do just a dull, static, sitting there like a good boy pose. I want to, you know, make him look a little more menacing, like I've done with Tundro here. Okay, odorless terpenoid. This is like my go-to thinner for like everything. I talk about this stuff all the time. Weber odorless terpenoid. This is an old can that I just keep refilling from this bigger jug. I refilled it today. And I only filled about halfway this can, and it's easier to pour. I don't have to worry about spilling too much out. But this stuff thins oil paint, thins, you know, helps to blend this clay. I'll use this and alcohol to blend Sculpey. And they both have their uses. The alcohol I'll use more as a finishing blender. It dries faster, and it's not going to attack the Sculpey so much. It's not going to soften it. Like, this is really going to soften the surface and make it a little tacky. But it's great for adding rock texture. You want to make rock texture, hit your Sculpey up with some of this and then tap it with a sponge, and you're all set. But you can see, hopefully, okay, see how this area in here is kind of rough? I'm going to use this brush, and I'm gonna apply some pressure with the brush and just kind of smooth it in here. And it's going to take a little bit of working. It's also good for filling in some of the little cracks and gaps because it liquefies the Sculpey as well. And unfortunately, that liquefaction also gets it in places you don't want it. So I'm going to get a second brush here to brush it off of the legs because I don't want it filling in any of the fine details. Just a little bit more in here. I usually, oh, here we go. Piece of paper towel to rub off that excess. And when you're blending this and pushing it around, you'll find mistakes that you've made. I actually see when I was pushing the Sculpey in here, I didn't push enough. So there was a thin hole, like a bubble. So I just need to fill it with a little more, and then I can just, you know, blend that in further. So now that's nice and smooth. And I'm just going to continue. What's nice with doing the brush is I can smooth the areas in between the legs that I couldn't get. And again, keep trying to keep some of the goo off of here. I don't want to forget to do it later, and since I'm doing a video, that means my mind is going to be in 1,000 different places. So I'm just kind of blending and pushing the stuff around with the brush with the odorless terpenoid. And I stress odorless terpenoid. Don't get the regular terpenoid. Um, it's it smells like turpentine. It's very strong. This stuff doesn't give me a headache or anything. It's just real nice to work with. Doesn't stink up the whole house. Nobody knows I'm using it. And if you're thinning oil paint with this stuff, it won't dry as quick as if you're thinning it with spirits, but but it won't attack your plastic either. And it doesn't take that much longer to cure. A lot of the spirits that model companies put out or recommend, they will, certain kinds of plastic like Bandai's, it will just crackle it. I destroyed quite a few kits before I figured out what was going on. Damaged my scope dog ankle joints with it. That was the one I think I realized what was going on. And I destroyed a whole V-Gundam kit as well by doing the weathering with those old MiG spirits. Oh, okay, good. I thought I saw another crack. It was just a stray paintbrush hair. Yay. All right, so now I'm just blending in the center here, and this is smoothing out all the fingerprints, all the tool marks, making a nice smooth transition from the unbaked Sculpey to the baked legs. And like I said, it'll fill in tiny cracks and gaps, but it'll also, when you're pushing with the brush and the stuff becomes softer, you will notice areas that need improvement. Oh, it's this brush that's leaking, dripping hairs. Okay, so the center is done, and that's pretty smooth. So it'll be ready for texturing once it sets up a little bit. What I'll do after I'm done with this part is I will brush all of this generously with alcohol, and the alcohol will evaporate and dry everything up a little better, a little quicker than if I were to just let this dry on its own. And it'll get it to the point where I can, normally I'd like to let this sit overnight. This is like one of the last steps I do overnight before, an overnight sit, and let the terpenoid just naturally evaporate out. But kind of want to finish this guy today so I can move on to the next one. So I noticed another hole in here where I hadn't completely filled it. I need to try some other sculpting products too. I mean, I usually use Sculpey, or I've sculpted with Abe's and Magic Sculpt before and didn't care for it because, this stuff, it's on a timer, it's on a clock. You can't walk away from it and go do research if you need to. You can't, once that stuff starts curing, you can only sculpt a little bit of it at a time, and that's not how I like to work. But when I first started doing sculpting, that's what I used, and my sculpts would end up taking forever, and I'd just get burned out and bored doing them after having to do that weight every, time I added more clay. This lets me be more efficient. But I need to try some stuff like Monster Clay and some of those other products I've never used. See how they work for me. I know some other sculptors that use them, and they speak highly of them, so. But I've never used them, and I like my results with this, but it's fun to try new stuff, and I might learn something new in the process. Even if that something new is that I prefer to do it this way. Time well spent. Okay, so that's done. That's all blended and smooth, just with the brush. I mean, it didn't make it dead flat or anything. Some of the tool marks are still in there, but those are fine for now, because when I start to go in and texture, you'll lose those. So now I need to make the tail. Let's see here. So Tundro's tail is just, I'll show you on the art here. It's just this little part here, kind of like a weird little armadillo tail. Real easy to do. I'm just going to make a ball of Sculpey, and I'm going to wipe this off. I'm going to roll a point here out of the ball. And then I'll flatten it around, and I'll get that general tail shape I need. That's about the size and shape. And then I'm going to cut a V. Maybe I'll use this piece of pipe here to cut out a rounded bit. Just a piece of brass tube. There we go. And that way it'll fit up under that back plate a little better. And there's a little bit of a mark here. I just saw some comments, but they disappeared off my screen. If you're on Facebook and you follow me, I just made before I started doing this, I made a post saying I was going to do a live sculpting video. So post your questions there if you can, ideally, or I don't know if you can post in the comments. I might forget to go back and look at the chat log, but I will. I don't mind. Actually, I like answering questions. I like helping out and doing that kind of stuff. To me, likes are not as meaningful as comments. Anybody can just click a button real quick and move on to the next thing. But if you take the time to comment, especially if it's like a constructive comment that's not just a good job, bud kind of thing, I like those. Ask questions, see what my process is if I didn't explain it properly. I think the question was how long to bake this, and Sculpey, you want to make sure that your oven is calibrated properly, and so you want to get an oven timer, not an oven timer. Most ovens have timers. You want to get a separate digital thermometer, the kind that has a lead that you could just drag into, just have that lead, that wire with the probe that you would stick in meat or something. Just put that in your oven, and check the temperature that way. Sculpey will start to burn at 325, 350. So you don't want to go that high. So you want to make sure that you get your Sculpey to 250, 275 to really make sure that the polymers all um, melt together. And that's what gives you a real good bond and prevents brittleness and cracking later. The tail's coming out good. Wonder if I should have it. Yeah, that would actually be cute. I'm gonna have it just bent out a little bit, like that. I think. In the end, maybe not so much. That's gonna make him look like he's actually pooping. But yeah, so check the actual temperature of your oven. I found that my oven, if I set it for 275, which I've burned Sculpey at, which is why I started doing the 200 for a long time. My oven actually, it's a gas oven, and if I set it for 275, that's about the minimum temperature. It'll heat, when it goes to heat back up, it'll heat it up to about 325 or more before the gas turns off. So you want to make sure that your range isn't really exceeding that 275. So on mine, I've started setting it for between 230 and 240. And that gets me, that I found, like, since I've been doing that the past few weeks, has been working really well. And the digital thermometer was cheap. I got it on Amazon for about $10. And I will definitely use it at Thanksgiving or the next time I make a turkey. We don't eat a lot of red meat in this house. My wife does it. She's a dietitian, a clinical dietitian, and she doesn't like it. And I'm fine either way. Like, I actually prefer chicken most of the time, except for burgers and meatloaf and meatballs. But other things, ground turkey is perfectly acceptable for different taste and texture. But as long as somebody's not trying to fool you with it, as long as you know what you're getting into. So what I'm doing here is I'm putting the little ridges in, and I'm using the metal tool because I'm just kind of cutting them in as opposed to pushing the clay around. So I'm basically just pressing them in almost like steps. So you can see I haven't done here yet. I'm just going to press and kind of rotate the tool a little bit, and that kind of cuts into the clay. And right now it's real angular, and this is how a lot of my stuff, little bits of this stuff starts out. Like these armor pieces. I added them as separate things, but then I blended them, then I, shifted them around a little bit as I was doing it. And I'm going to take this tool and I'm going to kind of cut a little gap in here. And on this one too. And here, I got the basic tail there. Now I'm going to take the wooden tool, and since it actually pulls and pushes the stuff around, and I can actually roll this tool, pull the tool, whatever works. The rolling is almost like using a rolling pin, so that's going to flatten things out for you. And I just want to make sure I have a nice transition in here, so I have minimal cleanup to do. It's kind of hard to hold it now because I don't want to mess up any of those legs. But yeah, this will have it'll look slightly polygonal, like with polygons, just from the rolling and the general cutting and shaping. And but then you start to, you just work it and you refine it a little more and a little more with each pass, and you get there. And it can be frustrating, and you can want to quit, and I've certainly done that before. I have projects I've just been like, yeah, forget it. Or, words close to that. All right. Just trying to get in there so it's rounded around the back too, so it doesn't just look like a flat piece I stuck in there. It needs to have that roundness, that dimensional look to it. All right, so now I'm just gonna kind of push this over that a little bit. I'll take this tool and I'll push a little gap inside of here. I want it to look like segments like the armor. And sometimes though when you're adjusting stuff, you're messing other stuff up just as much. And I just tapped the horn off of the table while I was doing this. And like I said, that's why I haven't ground the horn into that pokey shape yet. Because if I had, those parts would be really thin right now and I totally would have smashed it 10 times over. All right, smooth my fingerprints off of here as much as I can. But this is looking pretty good. Now I just want to recut in those little gap lines, and then I'll smooth it. All right, there we go. Tail done-ish. Time to blend. All right, so I'm gonna grab the terpenoid, odorless terpenoid again, and go to town. Just blending back and forth, pushing the clay around with the brush as needed. This is gonna fill in some of the finer gaps that I cut in, which is fine. I can recut those in smoother once this is all blended. And once this is all blended, it'll be easier to see what I've done, what I need to fix. Just had a thought. I'm wondering how I should texture the tail. I'm wondering if the tail should be textured like the armor or like the rhino skin. And see, now that this is all smoothed and, softened, it's easier to get in there with your tools and move stuff around without doing as much pulling and damage. And once it starts to dry on your brush, you'll find it starts putting lines in it and pulling the clay, and that's desirable because that's actually helps you with the blending. There we go. There was a little bit of a lip there I didn't want. Alright, I think this tail's ready for, just about ready for texture behind it here. Alright, there we go. So now how am I going to texture it? Keep your tools clean. Keep, get as much of the excess sculpey out of your brush as you can. I'm working on a piece of thick plexiglass that I don't even know where it came from. Somebody, I think a neighbor, was having a garage sale. Actually, it might have been the same. Actually, I think I know exactly who I got it from. I think it was the same lady I got my little petri dish trays from. She bought like a whole stack of them for her daughter's school project, and her youngest daughter, who's friends with mine, she just graduated this year, and she gave me a bunch of pipettes and those petri dishes and the plexi, and I've made use of them. Like this sheet's perfect for, as a base for the clay. What I'm doing here on the top is I'm just taking a little bit of the clay and I am filling in that crack. And the nice thing about the crack is it is, you can't see it now. It's gone. Okay. And unfortunately, I got more cracks in this than I thought I was going to, but they're not in like difficult areas. So, in fact, most of them are actually along where I expected them to be, which was areas I would expect to fail, which I'd hope they would fail along, which is in between the armor here. Since those are cut in already anyway, if they fail there, then that's fine. But if I were to get like a big one, across the face, that would kind of suck. But yeah, when I bake this again, I had a crack on the horn before from drilling it hollow, and so I already fixed a crack before the last bake. Okay, so that crack is fixed. I see one in here. And I'm just doing these while I wait for the tail and the underside to dry up a bit. Like I said, it can be a little difficult to texture when it's too tacky, which it is now. So I should actually, while I'm thinking about it, I should just go heavy, brush it with alcohol, and the 91 isopropyl. I keep it in an eyedropper, eyedrop container, clearly labeled. I don't wear contacts anyway, so let's see. So I'm just going to brush this alcohol real heavy, and that is going to dry out the clay as it evaporates. It'll also make it tacky in the short term, so it's good for quick blending if you don't have a lot of time. In this instance, I just wanted to, I'm using it to make that stuff cure a little faster. Metal tool, where'd you go? Okay. All right, so those are gonna dry while I fill in these cracks, and they're pretty easy. I did end up with one right here on the back of the neck, and this area here is where I blended the already baked head with the rest of the body. So this is where I had transitioned. So having a crack here is not exactly unexpected. I kind of figured I might have a little bit of problems in this area, and I'd had. There's a nice one right here on the face that once I fill it in, it'll just look like another one of the cracks that I had already put into the face. So I'm just going to push. I don't want to fill this with super glue or anything. I want something filling this that's going to move with the rest of it as far as temperature changes and such go. Like, it's why if I use a material as an armature, the aluminum mesh wrapped over the piece of thick cardboard mailing tube is great. That is going to shrink in the oven very minorly or expand. If I'd used metal though, the metal isn't going to move with, like solid metal, not the mesh, but the metal, solid metal's not going to move with the clay as it's baking. So if something doesn't bend, it breaks. You can alleviate that by trying to force any cracks into certain areas. So if you know something's probably going to crack, you can cut in your own lines ahead of time in areas that will be easier to adjust later if your design calls for that. Not all designs do, but you know, try to plan ahead as much as you can. And that's the thing. That's one of those learning experiences. I didn't know that at first, and I made my own share of mistakes with stuff crumbling and cracking and breaking, and so I pass on this knowledge to you. I think I'm going to do the tail texture the same as this. I think that'll be better. And I will do it lighter as it gets near the tip. And to do this texture, it's simple. It's probably criminally easy, but it's just like pointillism art. You're just tapping it randomly with this ball tool, and I'm using both sides of the ball so that I get different size indents to make it look even more random. And I'm going to do it heavier on this top one, and then you can see how it's kind of peaking, like toothpaste, because it's still kind of tacky. And I need to look into it. I saw something about you can bake clay beads in a bed of cornstarch, and I want to look into that, because if I can dust this with cornstarch the same way I dust my Abe's with baby powder to smooth it, well, you know, to keep it from being tacky once I've used water or their own safety solvent. If I can do that, then that opens up a lot of possibilities. So I want to look into that. If I could dust that with baby powder, then that would be very cool. And I'm just going to add a little bit of texture to the tail. One, because it's harder to add texture to this little floating piece, but two, I kind of want the texture to transition. And now, let's see, I have a flat brush here that I've been using to smooth this stuff. I need alcohol, not that. Okay. And I'm just gonna brush this with the alcohol to smooth out the peaks. And that's gonna smooth out this texture. I'm gonna let all evaporate a little bit just to the eye, so it doesn't have that, you know, wet sheen to it. And then I will take this little piece of sponge and I will tap it, and that's going to get rid of any brush marks. It'll add just a little bit of rough texture. And the tail's all done. I think it looks pretty good. It looks like I have a line here. So that's why I like to keep things moving and adjusting the lights. I didn't notice that was there until I had seen it in a different light, and shadow was cast on it from a different direction. So when you're sculpting, it actually helps to play with your light. Don't really care for those. I don't think I would. I keep seeing people. They have those arcs. Those they look like a rainbow of just it's an LED arc over their desk, and I feel like I use light so much as a tool to check things that having that all-encompassing light might be more of a hindrance than a benefit. But I could be wrong. And if that works for you, do it, man. You do you. You do what works for you. I do what works for me. And if it works, then awesome. You know, it's more than one way to skin a cat. I should know. I have 4 of them. I love my kitties. I'd never skin them. I don't even think I'd be able to bear to taxidermy them if they died. I just feel like that would be creepy. All right. So now that the tail is done and this has had a little time to set up, I want to do a little final cleanup inside of here as well as texture. What if I boil the Sculpey? I've never heard of boiling Sculpey. I can't imagine mixing it with water would be a good thing. The fumes aren't really bad. It's not like, I don't know. I'm perfectly fine. I've been doing it for years. So you should be fine. No, but in all seriousness, just bake it. Just do it the proper way, I think, if you can. I don't think boiling's going to help. So this tool I made with some thin brass wire. I have different sizes of these loops that I've made. And these, I'm just going to go in like a zigzag pattern, kind of back and forth. And this is going to put in the little wrinkles. And once I blend it, it'll look like, try to get this in focus. It'll look like this area. Come on, focus already. Here we go. It'll look more like that. That's what I want for underneath. I just need to decide. Well, I see the weirdo in me is thinking, does he need a belly button or nipples like a dog or cat or anything like, you know, what should I put? Should I put like rib detail under here? But again, it's not even going to be seen, so I'm not even 100% sure. Okay, let me look at my hand here. Okay, so here the skin folds are going this way in between the 2 fingers. And kind of in between the thumb too. So I'm gonna use that as my point of reference. And I'm going to put the wrinkles going across. I'm gonna go in both directions. And some I'm gonna, you know, cut in a little deeper with the loop. I have smaller loops, so like this one is just the smallest one I could possibly get, and it's just by bending the wire over. And I also have it at an angle, so I can get in to tighter areas. And of course I'm going to go around the legs as well to get those in. So yeah, back and forth, I think, just like my fingers, kind of in a X pattern back and forth. Try to get that, see, use the light to show how that's working. And I think the smaller loop is going to work better. Howdy, what's up, Blaney? No. My daughter just walked in. She's the one that also does sculpting.
That's good.
Thank you. I'm just trying to figure out how to do the wrinkles around the insides of the legs here. Mm-hmm. But he's standing real nice. Check him out.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
You still gotta do the horn.
Yes. You're not the third person to tell me that I forgot the horn. Didn't forget the stupid horn.
I know.
The people online have been telling me that too. They're not reading the full thread. Mm-hmm. So. And I have the reference. Thank you. It's getting there. It's getting a little tighter to do the texture inside of here.
Yeah.
How you like the tail?
Oh, that looks good.
Thank you. Yeah, he's almost done, and then I can start on the dragon. And then your favorite, Igoo.
What? You're doing
Lainey, for those of you that don't know, Lainey has a thing about monkeys. She really hates monkeys and apes. No idea why. Like as a baby, we had this set, like she had this set of little plastic dolls. She's leaving now because I'm talking about her. She had this set of plastic toys, and one of them was a gorilla. It was a little plastic gorilla. Nothing super scary about it, but she embarrassing your kids. This is so fun. She yeah, she was crying one night. She's like, "There's a monster. There's a monster in my room. Get the monster out of my room." We had no idea what she was talking about, so we let her out of her crib, and she went over, grabbed that ape, that gorilla, and threw it out of her room into the hallway. So ever since she's a baby, she's had this weird thing about monkeys and apes that she just does not like. So she's a little upset that I'm doing Igoo. But I got to do the whole set. I can't skip Igoo. As far as the humans go, I kind of, I'll admit it, man, I'm not that great at sculpting humans. I'm blending this now with alcohol. I'm just gonna take care of the peaks and stuff and kind of soften it and make it look more like wrinkles. But I'm not very good at humans, so I asked a friend of mine, somebody who's done some kit design for Industrial Mechanica with me. I asked him if he would be interested in kind of collaborating on the project and if he wanted to do the humans, and he's interested. So he's going to he's going to 3D sculpt the human figures, and I'm going to take care of all the creatures in clay and the painting, and then and the base, and then we'll display them all together at Wonderfest. Plan to go to Wonderfest in 2020. Not necessarily as a vendor, though. I've done it as a vendor for my company, Industrial Mechanica, before, and I just did not enjoy doing it as a vendor. It's a lot of work, and I didn't actually get to see much or any of the show. Like I only saw the entries because I was asked to help judge, and so I got to see them in the evening after the room was closed when we were judging. And that was really the only time I got to see the entries. I didn't get to do any of the, uh, different events or anything. So I think this year I'm going to go as just as an attendee and see the show from another point of view where I'm not stuck behind a table for 8 9 hours without a bathroom break. Turned 45 this year. My bladder can't do that anymore. All right, I am going to call him done. You can see just the fine. I mean, it's not even a great texture underneath there, but it is good enough for what you will actually never see. And the butt area here, I feel like I need to just clean this up a little bit. Oh, I gotta tap it all with a sponge still too. And just this transitioned edge here where it blends into the armor. Get in there with a sponge. Yeah, he's all done. I just have to bake him, do the final bake, and he's good. So I'll show you guys see how he's kind of tilted to the side, kind of like he's charging and like doing a turn. So that is Igoo. I mean, not Igoo, that is Tundro. And this is Tundro next to the 124 scale Barrio guy. So I think I got the proportions pretty good as far as human to weird 60s creature. Just I wish I'd done him just a little bit longer, but that's all right. If that's the only complaint I have, then I'm happy with it. So I'll give him his final bake, then I will grind away the excess of the horn, And I want to see, you can get those LEDs that come, that people use for making lightsabers, scale lightsabers, and like beam sabers for Gundam kits. It's a long, thin, tube-shaped battery with and it's a certain kind of LED that fits on top. And there's no on or off switch. You put the LED on the top of the battery and it lights up. But the battery is long and very thin. And I think I want to see if I could fit one of those down the tube here. I might have to open up the hole a little bit more here. But if I could do that, I want to do some of the cotton and do some of the energy rocks shooting out of his horn. I think that'll look cool. I don't know how I would do Zock's laser eyes and tail. I don't think that's going to be possible since that's, a laser. And I don't want to do that dumb looking clear part stuff. But I think for this, for the horn thing, I think that could look pretty cool. And that's simple enough. Just make an assembly with the LED built into the cotton or foam thing that fits in here with the energy rock and go from there. On the Zock printout, I printed out Zock's and Igoo's, but I love this. Throws energy rocks too. I have no idea how he throws energy rocks. It looks like he's just picking rocks up off the ground, and maybe he energizes them. But he throws rocks, and that's kind of neat. But I don't know if I want to do that. I don't think I want to do a flight pose because then I have to do some kind of rod thing to hold him up, and that's just going to look weird. Like I don't know. I think if I do flight, I would do a pose where he's just taking off or just landing, and that way I could do the tail still on the ground and have some kind of bolt or something in the whole armature that would fit down, and that tail is where I would hide the mount so it looks more, natural. I don't think I'm going to have him throwing rocks, but I thought that was pretty cool. But I really love the shape of his face. I think that's really neat. It's definitely got a lot of character to it, and I really like the general shapes. I wasn't sure in any of these pictures, so I had to do a little more research, but I wasn't sure if that was a tongue hanging out or just his chin, and it's just part of his chin. And this picture I already put on my Facebook page. It's a size comparison, so you can see how much taller Igoo and Zock is going to be, and how big, Gloop is. Gloop's going to be pretty big sculpt compared to him. Gloop's going to be, about this tall. So those ones are going to be fun. All right, so I think that's it for now. I'm going to go, and I'll probably have to wait till after dinner to bake him because I'm going to need the oven for dinner. Okay, well, anyway, check out FichtenFoo.com for more tips, techniques, my gallery. IndustrialMechanica.com is where I sell and collaborate to design model kits, resin kits on original subjects. So you'll never see anything like this because this is a licensed property. Everything on there is original. And also check out my Etsy shop where you can buy some of my finished original pieces. All right, thanks guys. Bye.